people were asked to look out for neighbors or fellow workers who seemed to meet the party's description of rightists or capitalist roaders or counter-revolutionaries, and who were denounced. But the boldest attempt to harness the energy and enthusiasm of the people came in 1958. To speed up progress, Mao wanted to use the force he believed in most, China's sheer numbers, for his great leap forward. Propaganda cartoons showed how the Chinese were meant to overtake Western industry and food production. Peasants, already reorganized into cooperatives, were herded into huge communes. In his area, District Secretary Zhong Guodong took on another challenge.
I was responsible for setting up people's communes and turned 8 agricultural cooperatives into 2 big communes. There were over 100,000 people in each one. Big communes could handle big projects. With thousands of people to do a job, things were completed in no time.
Production brigades were directed to where they were thought to be needed most, under militia-like discipline. The party said it was a more efficient, better, faster way to build socialism. Private land had already gone. Now family life was to be destroyed as well. Peasants were to eat food cooked in central kitchens. Children would be looked after together. Mao set the target of doubling food production in 1 year. Revolutionary enthusiasm, he said, will triumph over all obstacles.
So revolutionary enthusiasm, however, did not triumph over all obstacles. In fact, Mao's Great Leap Forward, as it was called, was a huge disaster. Arguably, the worst government-imposed disaster in human history because of the suffering it brought to the people of China. That's what you need to learn about the Great Leap Forward. And this is pretty much an uncontested fact today. Even at different times, the Chinese Communist government has acknowledged this. Okay? And the research and the historical research on this is almost difficult to refute in any way. Not almost. It is impossible. Let me be even more stronger on this point. It is impossible to refute. Okay? So, don't let anybody be a Great Leap Forward denier to you out there. It was an unmitigated disaster. I'm not even questioning their intentions. The results speak for themselves. Yes, what was the Great Leap Forward? It was this economic and social campaign we were just hearing about. It was Mao's move from the gradual collectivization that had been happening in the 50s before this. They had denounced the landlords. I talked about all that. They had given peasants some land. They had made these cooperatives, but now they moved everybody into these very regulated large communes. And it was a military style living. They purposely tried to break down the family. And they told everybody, you're going to have to produce all this much more grain, and we will because of our revolutionary zeal. But these policies led to starvation and famine. Okay? But remember, the economic and the social campaign always go together. That's the way Marxism, and specifically Marxist, Leninist, Stalinist, Maoist communism works. Okay? Communists do things because they're communist. Don't let anybody tell you any differently. I know I'm making some of these statements here, and I usually don't. I'm not as strong on giving my opinion, but this is opinion that I believe is completely based in the facts. You don't have to agree with me about it if you don't want to. because in the United States, you can still have differing opinions. But I think I'm on pretty solid ground here as a historian. So again, the results were massive starvation. We don't even know how many died. That's a total guess number. I've seen numbers wildly fluctuating, so I kind of picked the middle numbers there. You can look up a lot about this online, so I'm not going to belabor it. One other thing to mention, if you watch the whole video that I've given you clips of here, and it is on Blackboard for people in my class, or I can share it with other people who are interested, they talk about how they tried to make every village into its own little industrial production center of metal goods, and this ended up being a huge disaster. So all these things together lead to this economic disaster, and they recognized it in the early 60s. And Mao actually, he wasn't removed from leadership, but he backed off of actually leading economic and campaigns. Other people were put in charge who were much more, we might say, pragmatic or practical. And the video talks about that. The next thing I want to talk about is Mao's Cultural Revolution. And I'm just going to try to hit some main points, and then we'll close with a video on this part too. It's from the same video we've watched clips from. The Cultural Revolution is the other big, so the two big things for Mao are the Great Leap Forward, and the other thing is the sometimes called the Proletarian Cultural Revolution. So in 1965, Mao and his friends in the party, including his wife, they began to come up with an idea as a way to really gain back control of the party within China. So we're really talking about a struggle, to some extent, a political struggle within the communist leadership in the Chinese government. And Mao comes out, it really started in 66. He gives a speech, and he encourages all the young people, the people that would have been the same kind of young people as the ones starting to really question things in Europe and the United States that we already talked about, to question everything. And he encouraged them to go out and basically attack, eventually, actually attack, like physically assault people who were leaders within the communist government, but also teachers, university professors. But all these people were, on the outside, completely devoted communists. It was similar to a purge movement, but it was a brilliant move because he convinced everybody that he was leading the real movement, and he convinced all these younger people who were high school and college age, who formed themselves into these things called Red Guards. They had a little book called Mao's Little Red Book. You can look it up online and read all of it. It's quotes from Mao's speeches, and everybody carried this little book around, and they would denounce people. They would shame people. They would protest, and they tore down old statues. They ransacked people's homes for anything that was culturally inappropriate. Yeah, does that sound familiar? Yeah, so watch out for people who use similar tactics. You want to learn something from history? Learn that from history. They took over the universities. As I said, they burned foreign books. They shamed foreigners, all kinds of things like this. And it was all done in the name of the Communist Revolution. Now, it did bring Mao back to almost complete power before it was over. Now, he had him pulled back in the early 70s. But so some of the more radical elements were he got them pulled back, but it essentially created this massive cult of personality that we see in every one of these authoritarian governments, most of which were communist, by the way. The exceptions being, of course, Hitler's Nazi government, and maybe Mussolini's fascist government, right? So Mao dies in 1976, and that's really where I'm going to stop with this. And I'll just end with this picture, and then we'll watch a little bit of the video to close out this lecture. So here's some red gold.
To earn money, it had a serious responsibility to re-educate people. We were so happy that Chairman Mao was creatively involved in this opera.
1966, the great proletarian cultural revolution was well underway. The group behind it, led by Mao's wife, and later to be called the Gang of Four, tried to build the Mao cult to new heights. In school, children recited his message to them. In Shanghai, at the No. 6 girls' school, Xiao Ailing was the headmistress.
我们同学就感到外态的变化、上海的变化。
The pupils came to realize that all the changes taking place in their families, at school, in Shanghai and China were brought about by Chairman Mao.
毛泽东带给我们的。
Students were used to carry the Cultural Revolution forward. For the first time, young people were encouraged to attack authority and the old hierarchy of the party. And the advice came from Mao himself. Bombard the headquarters, he said. To rebel is justified. One of the Beijing students who were the first to call themselves Red Guards was Zhang Baoqing.
Chairman Mao started the Cultural Revolution to keep up the momentum for change. Everything he said was right. We thought if we follow Mao, we can't go wrong. Only he can lead us from one victory to another.
A succession of huge rallies were held in Tiananmen Square. The master of mass mobilization had shown he could still draw a political response directly from the people. This time it wasn't the peasants in the country who did his bidding. The most educated and energetic generation in China were following his every word. The students felt excited and liberated as never before. An estimated 11 million Red Guards came to see Mao. 15-year-old Xiao Shoujun was presented to him.
那个时候呢，我是直顾的激动，直顾的兴奋，
I was so overwhelmed by the excitement, my mind just went blank.
空白。
The only thing I wanted to do was to get a good look at Chairman Mao
这个
and shake his hand if I got the
看毛主
chance.
席，我要多握几次毛主席的手，一有机会我就要去跟
I shook hands with him 3
我一共
times
跟毛主席握了
because
3
I'd been
次
received by
10万
Chairman
100万的
Mao. Millions of Red Guards regarding me with awe.
认为我是也是一个很
When
伟
they
大
saw
的
me,
人。
they always wanted to
见了
shake
我
the hand that
的第一
Chairman
面呢，
Mao
就是
had
要跟
shaken.
我握手，握毛主席握过的手。